It's been 4 years since Phoenix police and county prosecutors lied, made up evidence, and invented a fake gang, all to falsely charge this group of protesters. It was a huge scandal, and it still is. The corruption was incredible. But now we've confirmed not a single officer will face charges, even though a criminal investigation recommended it. I'm ABC 15 Chief Investigator Dave Biscobing. That criminal case was launched because of our reporting, but it ended recently and quietly, with officials turning it down, and you're about to see why. This is the criminal investigation. It's 161 pages. It's evidence against the police and prosecutors who helped arrest and charge this group back in October 2020. And in this section, it recommends charges should be considered for 8 people, most of them for writing false reports or for perjury. But prosecutors refused, and we'll show why later in this story.
I believe there's more than enough evidence to put that to a jury.
I mean, there's more evidence there than there were against the protesters.
Correct.
Christina Carter is a defense attorney who represented some of those protesters. You were an attorney kind of right there at the beginning. I mean, we've shown video of you sitting in court with one of the protesters who was, lied about and falsely charged. And so now we're here more than 4 years later. Have you seen any real accountability for the officers involved yet?
I have not.
So let's break down this investigation. It was done by a retired FBI agent named James Eggleston. His report recommended perjury charges for 2 people, Sergeant Doug McBride and prosecutor April Sponsel. They told a grand jury the group was a documented gang called ACAB, something they knew was false. The ACAB gang. And our investigation also exposed even wilder accusations. Court records show the state called a police witness to testify that ACAB was just as dangerous and in many ways more dangerous than notorious gangs like the Crips and the Bloods. The Crips and the Bloods. For reference, it's estimated that those street gangs have committed more than 15,000 homicides, while this group carries umbrellas. The criminal investigation also suggested charges for 5 officers: Joseph Crawley, James Grote, George Herr, Adam Legier, and Alex Volk. They were accused of tampering with the public record, basically knowingly writing false reports. Some of the false reports were written about Ryder Collins. He's a nurse from Prescott who was downtown to meet up with a photography group when he saw the protesters marching and watched from the sidewalk. But police swept him up.
I come out here to do photography. I didn't know this was a thing.
Then made things up to justify his arrest.
Should have stayed in Prescott.
The investigation found other false reports were written about Suvarna Ratnam. She was a protester with the group, but Phoenix also brought false charges against her from another protest. They claimed she tried to stab them with a sharpened umbrella, almost like a joust. But we obtained video showing that was entirely made up, and our reporting was cited in the criminal investigation.
Just speaking as to Suvarna.
Christina Carter was one of Suvarna's defense attorneys.
She was participating in a demonstration.
You can see them here together at this October 2020 court hearing. And 4 years later, Christina's troubled by the long delay between then and now. Do you feel like the intent was just to draw this out as long as possible? Do you think that's part of the calculus?
I do. I think delay is absolutely a part of the calculus. And we have to remember that all of the agencies that are looking at this are self-protecting agencies, whether it's the county attorney's office or the police department.
We hope to speak to Chief Michael Sullivan about all of this, but the chief did not agree to our interview requests. Instead, Phoenix PD sent a statement emphasizing that prosecutors found none of the individuals committed any acts that warrant criminal prosecution. It's not a question of opinion, it's a fact. The reports that a lot of these officers wrote were false. And at this point, it seems there's just really going to be no criminal repercussions for any of that.
I would say that's fair. There's not going to be any criminal repercussions.
So what does that say to officers for in the future, that it's kind of like...
I think it speaks to there's no accountability. There's no real accountability.
So who made the decision not to prosecute? That would be lame duck Pinal County Attorney Kent Volkmer. His office took over the case because Maricopa County was tied up in the scandal. Volkmer also ignored our interview requests, but in his turned-down letter, he wrote he couldn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the officers knew or believed they were making false statements.
I think that, reading that denial letter in which they referenced beyond a reasonable doubt, that's a question for a jury.
Now, 2 final things. One, that criminal investigation also asked prosecutors to consider an assault charge for one of the officers. That's because after police arrested the group that night, a bystander criticized the officer for shooting the protesters at close range with pepper balls. The officer then pushed the man down some steps. That officer is Christopher Turiano. We reported on him before, showing how he once shot a protester in the groin and how he's been caught using excessive force. And now the last thing. If you're wondering if any of these officers have been disciplined or suspended, no, they haven't. After 4 years, Phoenix still has not completed their internal investigation. In fact, the city paused it for several years while that criminal investigation was ongoing. I'm investigator Dave Biskobing, ABC 15, Arizona.